Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boxing fans around the world. Well, we finally wrapped it up. Our weekend of boxing, or at least the fights worth watching anyway. We had a couple of them have some interesting thing. But the main story, of course, the big story is as expected, and I'll say openly as expected. Go back to my preview. But as expected, Kell Brook took out Amir Khan. It took him 6 rounds. I figured it'd take him a little bit longer, but I did speculate that we didn't know how Kell Brook was feeling after all the hype and all the turmoil and the A-side demands and all the insults that happened. You know, the A-side demands coming from Amir Khan's camp, all the screaming and yelling from BoMac, about how he was this amazing trainer. He's going to turn Khan around, and how Kell only lasted 4 rounds, but yet Khan lasted this. I mean, Amir Khan and BoMac did an amazing job selling the fight, and that's all I can say there. Because when the dust settled, Kell Brook went in there, truly the special one, and stopped Amir Khan and didn't need a rematch to do it. I wouldn't say he looked amazing. He looked decent, but he also looked his age. It was a little bit hard for him to time Khan, but we knew that was going to happen. Khan is always that great starter. The problem is that he doesn't really adjust to what's in front of him, and eventually the person across from him is going to time him and catch him with something. Now, I do see when you talk about Kell Brook, as an example, he's able to legit stop Amir Khan, whereas Crawford had tossed a low blow on the dude to get him out of there. So if anything, I think Kell Brook did an amazing job against Khan compared to how Crawford did it. That's one. Of course, Canelo has the highlight reel, but Canelo's Canelo, right? So I'm giving all praise to Kell Brook for what he did in there, and we don't know how he was feeling walking in there because of all what was happening and all the build and all the noise and the A-side and all that. We don't know how he was feeling and how that contributed to his performance, but it struck me in the ring walk, and him in the ring, Brook seemed like he was on a mission. He said that he has wanted this fight for a long time. He said that he knows he can beat Amir Khan. I would argue that even if this fight had happened years ago like it was supposed to, we would have seen basically a similar outcome, probably with a highlight reel knockout in earlier years. Because Khan has a predictable pattern. As I said it before, he doesn't really adjust to what's in front of him, and eventually his opponent's going to time and catch him, and Kell Brook is one of the best at doing this. He was able to catch Crawford, pretty much won every round against Crawford prior to the weird stoppage. So I had thought pretty strongly that Kell Brook, there really should have been no reason for Kell Brook to lose this fight other than potentially motivation. If he wasn't motivated, and he convinced us he was motivated. He convinced us he was serious about his claims he was going to take this guy out. He convinced us that, yes, I can beat him. I want to beat him. This is the fight I've wanted for a long time. And people online have said, you know, he should have got his knockout. The ref jumped in too soon. You got to remember it's Amir Khan. He's been knocked out on quite a few occasions. His heads hit the canvas quite a few occasions. And the ref, his job is to protect the fighters at the end of the day. So I have no problem with the fact it was a stoppage. I won't say it's premature because it's Khan. Like, it's a little bit different. I will say, though, with Amir Khan and all that chatter, the guy was amazing in selling the fight. Amir Khan pretty much single-handedly sold the fight. And BoMac to a lesser degree, but it really was Khan. All Khan's noise, all Khan's talk, all Khan's social media. He promoted this fight. He sold it perfectly, which is kind of interesting. You know, you eventually expect him to get knocked out. So then he does all that talking, which makes you want to see him get knocked out. So he's like playing a heel, to use wrestling terms. And he did to perfection, I think. That was what made the fight worth even watching. I wouldn't call it a masterclass or going down in history as a classic or any of that kind of stuff. It went the way that you should expect it. Khan comes out decent strong with his flurries, and he's fast, and it's hard to catch him, and he's kind of mobile, and then Brook eventually times him, and then from there, Khan goes Bambi legs, and then it's academic beyond this. That's what we saw. That's what you expected to see. We wouldn't expect to see anything different. But Khan kind of sold people, some of the casuals, on the idea that he was game and that he was a new fighter and that he was able to take this guy out. And I think people ignored the fact that when Khan fought Terrence Crawford, he had gotten dropped, I believe it was off a jab. In early rounds, he didn't get, wobbled or stopped. He wasn't hurt off the shot. But the fact that he was dropped off such a shot that early told me, okay, something's not right with this dude. Possibly he's no longer can take a shot, or if he takes that shot, he's no longer able to react well to it. When he fought Chino Maidana, it was the later rounds where Chino eventually got him on Bambi legs, and he was in trouble that whole round. But prior to that, he was eating Chino's shots, and he was fine. So I think we're just at that point where his punch resistance is near nothing. after having been kind of degraded over various fights. Anyhow, major respect and kudos to the special one, Brook, for getting it done as we expected he would get it done. I would say he's got, in my opinion, he's got one, maybe two more fights before he should hang it up. Take your money, enjoy your life, spend time with your family. I would say Khan should hang it up now because he's at this point. I don't see him being able to win hardly any fight. If you want to feed him like a Conor Ben or something, that's fine. But I think he should just hang it up, walk to the sunset. As far as BoMac, we were able to prove that BoMac really has zero influence on Crawford's success, and Crawford just has innate skill. And it doesn't even matter who would be in Crawford's corner, he would still have the same success that he has had. And BoMac doesn't really strongly contribute to that success. So him claiming that he was responsible for Crawford beating Brook and so on, we know is a joke. And at the end of the day, that's fine. He can, he's a former heavyweight fighter, journeyman though he was, he's still a former fighter. And Floyd has even said, as long as you're in the ring and you know what it's like, then you probably have some respect. And so we give him some respect for being a fighter that's training these guys instead of like somebody's dad, like Kenny Porter. At the end of the day, though, we have to acknowledge based on Khan's performance, getting taken out in 6 rounds, which is less than I expected, we have to expect that BoMac ultimately had no contributing factor to Crawford's success, and thus he's not going to be able to train any other fighter like he did Crawford. It's a one-shot pony, similar to Freddie Roach, ironically, who also trained Amir Khan. Because you got to put in perspective. As I said on the previous, Amir Khan has gone through multiple trainers. So at some point, you kind of have to look at the fighter because it was never about the trainer. It didn't matter which trainer he was going against. Khan it's something about him where he doesn't adjust. He doesn't change. And however they convinced him that he was ready for this fight, either they lied or they said, you know what, it's the best we could do. Let's just go with it. And in their heads, they knew he was going to get knocked out. Something happened there because, BoMac should be ashamed of himself. Crawford should be ashamed of himself for the way that Khan basically did the same thing he always did and got taken out the same way he always did. Anyhow, Kell Brook, folks, your winner by stoppage.